Welcome to the X Podcast. We are so excited to have you with us today. And I have some new guests with us today on the podcast. I have with me Jessica Castles.
Hello.
Jessica, we're glad to have you. She is the wife of Trey Castles, who is our worship and arts pastor, director, executive pastor. He does a little bit of everything here.
Yeah.
Do you feel that at home, that he does a little bit of everything?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah. He's pretty talented.
He is pretty talented.
He is very talented.
And he's blonde. And he's
Well,
good
sort of.
looking.
Depends on
And
what time of the year
Am I
it is.
allowed to say that?
Maybe.
Okay.
It's fine.
But anyways,
He's blonde right now.
he's blonde right now. That'll
Yes.
change. So Jessica is with us as well as Zach. Zach, you're returning. You've been on this podcast before, but
Yeah.
you're back with us today.
Back again. Back in black.
You're not wearing
I'm
black.
not wearing
Gray.
black.
Back,
in
in
gray.
fact, you have your girly dad shirt on.
It's not
Oh,
girly dad.
oh, sorry, I
You
misread
added-
that. The
You
microphone
added
was
that
about girl
word.
dad.
Yeah, girl dad.
Yes, I'm a
Yes.
girl dad. In fact, we both have girls and you have
Yes.
boys.
All boys.
You have all boys and we have all girls.
Yep.
And you
Team girl.
You have how many girls?
Two.
Yeah. Two?
Well, one probably coming any day now.
Any day now.
And so we're looking forward to that.
In fact, by the time this episode
Probably.
releases,
Probably
you will
will.
probably be a dad
Probably.
of 3 daughters.
Yes, I
Yeah.
will.
Well, congratulations in advance.
Thanks, man.
I'm
It's
excited
gonna
for
be
you. Your
fun.
life will change forever.
Yes.
And
Send all the help now for proms,
You are-
weddings,
Yeah, you're
You are
gonna
in
be
homecomings.
trouble.
Yes, it's not going to
just
be
wait
fun.
till wedding season.
No,
Or all
no, no,
3
no.
of them.
It's-
You
no.
better start saving now. You're gonna be broke.
I mean, the
thank
first two
you.
are close together too.
Yeah, like 16 months.
Oh my.
They're gonna be sharing the same clothes. Hopefully not dating the same boy. That'd be weird.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, at least you can do hand-me-downs.
yeah, but do girls like hand-me-downs? I don't know.
It doesn't matter.
We'll figure that out.
Second and third don't get a
No, they
choice.
just go in their girlfriends' closets or their sisters'
They'll
closets
steal it.
and steal
Steal it.
whatever's
They
there.
will. They'll go
No
steal. I've seen
problems,
that
no
with my
problems
daughters.
There's no
there.
hand me down. It's just
Take what's mine.
closets.
Yeah.
Just you know.
They swap.
Yeah.
Well, and then when they get old enough and they get big enough, that's when your wife can go into their closet
Wait,
or
that's a
vice
thing?
versa. But usually it doesn't work that way. Usually they don't come into my wife's closet to steal her stuff.
Probably not.
She goes into their closet to take their stuff.
Do they get mad at that?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No,
That's
because
good.
we buy it all.
Sure.
So what are you going to get mad about?
I don't
So we bought it. So
Well,
anyways,
I really do need to start saving then.
you do. It gets really expensive.
Man.
But anyways,
Ooh.
congratulations.
Thanks,
And
man.
glad to have you on the show today. And why Jessica is here and Zach. I'm not really sure why you're here in terms of what we're going to talk about
It's
today.
fine.
That's a little odd. But
Yeah.
But no, I'm glad that you're here as well. We're going to talk about something that is maybe a little bit more specific to our church context. Now, our podcast, and for those of you that follow along, I know that some of you are part of our church, our community of faith, and then there's some of you that aren't. And we're just so glad to have all of you who listen or watch and join us. But today we're going to be talking about something a little bit more, I guess, from our specific context of our church and faith. And we're going to talk about it in terms of women. And so that's one of the reasons why we have Jessica here. We are creating something brand new for the women of our church.
Ooh.
And
It's
so
gonna be
we've
fun.
got Jessica here who is kind of really helping us kind of launch and
Yeah.
lead this
Yeah.
specific I guess women's focus, women's ministry. I don't know how you'd want to label it, but so let's start off with the name of it. Okay, so
Yeah.
with a little drum roll. Okay, why don't you give us the name
All
of this
right.
new women's focus, women's ministry, whatever you want to call it.
It's gonna be called Inspired.
Say it again loudly.
Inspired.
Inspired.
It's going to be fun.
What inspired you to
see what
call
you did
it
there.
Inspired?
Yes.
What inspired you for that name?
You know, I don't know. If you really want the surface version of that, it's a short word that sums up a lot, and it has a lot of creativity, a lot of different directions you could go with it. But I think it's just, you know, if you name a ministry that, I mean, especially like we're a church, and you have a word that you want to name a certain ministry. You also want to be welcoming, inviting to people
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
have never been to a church or have no context of what it means to be in church. So I just love the word inspired because it's not really like a word from a verse that you can pick out or
Right.
something, but it's just the truth of it is that we have a creator that has created everything and all that is in the world, and he's the true inspirer of everything, and there's no original idea because it comes from him. And I think that, like, you know, we go throughout life and we might say to someone like, you inspire me, and it's really, if you think about it, it's not the person that inspires you, it's God that created that person and everything in them, how their personality, and, you know, how they tick, like what makes them tick, and what they love, and what the aspirations that they have in their life. And so I feel like, you know, we're inspired all the time. And so just to have a word that captures just the God that we serve just made me like, I just love that.
Well, and I think too, it's something that I think everybody wants to live inspired.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's something that you hope, I assume, for the women of our church and our community, that they can find what it means to live inspired in whatever role they play. Because let's face it, every woman I know plays multiple roles. We all do.
Yeah.
You are a mom, as we already said. You're a wife, and you lead things, and, you know, you are a creator. So like, what does it mean to do all those things inspired rather than just making it through? To me, that seems like something that I think everybody wants when it comes to how we live our lives.
I feel like at each stage in my life, I've just been inspired by several different people and several different things. And I think that sometimes it's not always people.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, like, I've been on vacations before where you look at a view and you're like, whoa, I'm like so small, and you know, I don't have it all together, but I want to, and I want to live my life the best I can.
Yeah.
And so I think that what it's challenged me to do is to take the different hats that I wear, and not just to like have a job to inspire others, but to be inspired, because as long as I'm like, you know, I have people that each stage of my life, like as a college student, there was someone that, you know, inspired me to, like, you know, start a Bible study one time. And then as a young mom, we all know how hard that is. You guys don't.
I
but.
don't.
No.
I can see it in my wife. But,
yes,
you know,
it's hard.
Yes.
Your whole life changes, and you wonder, what am I doing, and
am
how,
I messing him up?
Yeah, and how do I do this, and what's the right way, or is there a wrong way? And so there's always, you know, whether it's books or nature or people, like I've just, you know, all along the way have been inspired by others to be a better person.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. I think really when I hear you speak to this, there's something inside the heart of every single person that wants to do something with their life, live a life of purpose and meaning. And so I think that's what I love most about where you're trying to go with this ministry, that you want to inspire people to see a life that maybe they're not living, see a life that they could possibly have, to dream about what they could become. And hey, let's walk there together.
Yeah.
I just think that's really cool.
Yeah.
I also think that when it comes to things like this, like for a certain group of people within our community of faith, so women within our community of faith, and I think it's something that reaches across to all of us. But, you know, what does it look like to be inspired? I know you mentioned that we're inspired by a lot of things. I think what inspires me the most, though, is sometimes looking at somebody else, their life, that I go, man, I wish I would like to live like that, and being inspired by other people. And I guess maybe, would you say that that's kind of part of some of the idea behind Inspired, is that it's about trying to, help the women of our church be able to connect and maybe to be able to find inspiration in other people for their lives. And like you said, whether it's being a mom or a wife or a professional in a job, or being a teacher, or, you know, being an accountant, but whatever it might be, like, for me, I think I often, like, there are people in my life that I've looked to that I watch how they've lived their life, and it inspires me.
Yeah.
Would you say that that's part of what you hope to see for the women in our church?
I think that, you know, like I said earlier, the surface answer to the word inspired is, like, you know, it's a short word, and it's, you know, has a lot of meaning to it, has a lot of different, weights to it. But I think if you actually want to dig deeper in coming up with this word, I was reading one time in the book of Thessalonians, and it talks about, it actually used, in my translation, used the word inspired. And I loved it because basically it's Paul writing to this group of people that have been inspired by the Holy Spirit to make a difference in their own life, to change the way that they live.
That's cool.
And Paul writes to them and tells them, hey, because you became imitators of me and the Lord, now you are being a model to those around you. And you've not only changed the way people view, you've inspired people around you to also know this same Jesus that you have been taught about. And so
cool.
when I started digging more into this word, that just kind of came up, and it was like, that's right. I mean, because I think in like you said, people have inspired you. And I feel like that's just that's a gift of God that he just puts people in our path that we can aspire to be, because they've gone before us in certain areas, and that have had the experiences and the time to figure that part out of their life, and can tangibly help someone else get on the same path.
Right.
So I think of mothers that have gone before me, and we had some really good friends when we used to live in Texas, and they had kids that were probably 6 to 10 years ahead of ours. And we hung out with them almost every weekend.
Yeah.
And I got to learn what it's like to parent a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old when I had a newborn.
Yeah.
And it was so inspiring just to see how they're handling discipline and friends and school and grades and all of that, the things that come with parenting. And for me to have the example, I think that was the important part. I had the example before me, inspired me to live the life like they did, because what they were living for and how they were living out their life worked for them. And I think it's all of our desires to live in a good, right way, to make the best of what we have with what we're given. And so I know for me, when I've seen people that go before me in a certain area or circumstance, I always want to be I almost need people ahead of me to know.
Yeah, we do.
Like what Paul was saying is that you were imitators.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think in the realm of a women's ministry, I can think of several times that I walked into a modern church service, and because I grew up in a very liturgical background, but when I walked into a modern church service, I didn't know the songs. I didn't know what raising your hands was to worship. I didn't know how to pray. And I had people that had gone before me and let me kind of get a front row seat to their life. And I became imitators of them. But what I didn't know was I was actually becoming an imitator of who God was, because that's who their inspiration was.
Yeah.
That's what they were moving
that's good.
towards that. And
Yeah.
so when I became an imitator of them, then I naturally started to realize and uncover that, it wasn't them that I was following.
Yeah.
It was God that I was following through them, because
Right.
they were able to model that for me.
That's really good.
I think it's really an interesting point, because I think back to my wife and I and our kind of journey growing up. We got married young, and so we had friends that we hung out with. They were all older than us. We always hung out with older people, and we, again at 20, or, early 20s, when late teens, and and we were married and young. We really did learn a lot about life from some older people that were just dear friends of ours. We would go over to our friend's house, John and Jen. They were probably about 4 years older than us, had a baby before, several years before us. And so we got to just almost do life with them. And we would go and watch football games, the Buckeye games, and other things like that. And we just spent so much time together, but it gave us an opportunity to see people who were more established. They had a house. We didn't have a house. They were through college or getting through college. They had a job. We were in, school for a job. And so it allowed us to be able to really be able to, I guess, see what life can be like a little bit further down. And I think that's what helped us grow up. We didn't even have, our parents were out of the country. And so it was really, I guess, strategic for us. We were able to make wise financial decisions at a young age because we had older people that were friends that were able to kind of speak into our life. And I don't think you can overlook that. I mean, let's be like frank here. Nothing really prepares you for life. School does not.
I know.
High school does not. High school might teach you about algebraic equations.
You need a guidebook.
You do.
Like, how do you pay taxes?
Oh, gosh.
How do you? I mean, like, how do you buy a car?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, how
What's
do you
a wise
how do you
decision?
invest
Lease
money?
or buy or all those things.
One of the things I think you said that just struck me, you said it was strategic almost, like you and your wife found someone to hang out with. And it's interesting to me because I think so many times we kind of go through life unintentionally and we just let life happen to us.
Yes.
It's just overwhelming.
Yes, it's overwhelming. We might look at someone and say, man, their life is inspiring. I want to be like them, but we don't actually go and do anything about it.
Yeah.
And so I think what I love and what I think separates people is people who say, hey, I want to be intentional about who I'm going to spend my time with.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let those people begin to shape me, to form me, to mold me. Because if you're not careful, the world we live in today, I mean, it's the disciple-making machine. It will shape your thoughts, all you have to do is wake up and just exist. And you have the world and its influences shaping you and forming you. And so I love just the idea of being intentional about who you're spending your time with, who you're trying to become. I think it can make all the difference in your journey as you try to become someone else.
Yeah. Well, I think on the way to becoming someone else,
Yeah.
you end up inspiring someone else behind you.
That's really good.
Because if you have a model and a person in front of you that you've maybe like, I love the way that they, handle their finances and are able to give, or, you're like, I want to do that one day. Well, you're going to make practical steps in order to get there.
Right.
But what sometimes we're not aware of is that there's someone behind us that's just a little bit younger than us that's looking to us for guidance. And it's not only like, I mean, I speak from the context of being a mother. It's not only our kids who are looking that we're going to be able to inspire. It's the life that we're living of those who take notice around us. And it's not something that we have to do. It's something that happens to us and then in turn just happens naturally as the people behind us. I mean, and if you want to take it a step further, you can be an inspiration. I mean, or you can, go the other way and make some wrong choices and people behind you be like, I don't want to do that. I'm going to change and I'm not going to, so I think that we just always have that choice.
I love the quote, that says that, I don't even know who originated, but it says, more is caught than taught.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that is so true of all of the most important things about life. We can sit there and you can go to classes, you can go to this, someone tell you, but it is really, it's shoulder to shoulder. It rubs off on you. Like that's how we learned about doing life, whether it's our parents, whether it's friends. And in fact, some of our best friends that we ever had when we were younger that we would spend, other than John and Jen, we would spend a ton of time that were part of our same church. The guy is Joe, and he's 16 years older than me. And him and his wife, we love them. We see them every year. We go hang out with them. We're like friends, even though there's a little bit of an age gap. But we were able to just kind of like, I don't know, like they were way further ahead. In fact, one of their daughters was in our wedding when she was like 9 years old, and so they were a lot further ahead. But we watched them go through all kinds of things, and yet it still gave us a different perspective on life because one day we became that age. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's just invaluable. Yeah. Now, why we're talking about all of this is because I guess maybe. I know in conversations with you, we're trying to take maybe a little bit of a fresh, I want to say, approach to women's ministry. So I want to just say this up front, and then maybe you can talk about what are we doing with Inspired? Why what is its primary purpose? And then we'll talk about what we're doing. And I just want to say that I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do anything necessarily methodological in the church, but we're trying to, I know in conversations go, hey, even though we've done different types of ministries like this in the past, we're trying to start something fresh, new, with a different perspective and a different purpose. And so I think because of that, it's going to look very different. So I say that because, some people have a picture in their mind, oh, I was a part of a ministry that did this, this, and this all the time. Well, it may not look anything like that.
Right.
So when you have been kind of working on crafting Inspired at the root level, what is the primary thing that you hope happens for the women at our community of faith through Inspired?
Yeah, I think you're right. When you talk about, ministries like this have happened before, and, I think it would be easy to say that because we are women, like we all have something in common. But I think it probably goes like a little bit deeper into that, in that, what we really hope to establish and, see for this is that people create authentic, meaningful relationships, because I feel like just the way that we're wired as people, as humans, is we desire to be close to someone, to not be alone, to do life with one another. And I think sometimes we can have gatherings and we can have a large community, and those have their place, and they're great, and they can be the point in which you like change the trajectory of your life. I mean, if you've walked into one of our experiences before, that's happened to several people, and it's a large gathering.
Yeah.
But I think that if I think back and if I look into the points in my life that have been pivotal in the direction that my life is going now, has been a compilation of close, meaningful relationships. And I think
That's
that makes
good.
all the
That's
difference.
had the most impact on your
Yeah.
life.
Absolutely. I think that the way that Trey and I have decided to parent has been because we've had a close-knit, long-lasting, circumstance, persevering kind of relationships that we've been friends with them through thick and thin, and we trust their advice, and they have a lot of equity in our lives, and so that has made an impact on how we parent. But every other choice in my life, what I decided to do as a living, or I think that has been probably the most impactful of all my relationships is what my priority and what my purpose was. And so all of those have been a benefactor of close relationships and meaningful relationships that I've had to be intentional about, and that have also been people willing to pour into me and willing to walk with me through my, the good, bad, and the ugly. And I think that that's what I desire really for every woman, is that we have those relationships, and we live in a culture where things can be so transient with social media, and I mean, I have so many people that I've talked to only on social media, and I have been in the same room with them and probably have never talked to them when I'm in person with them. So I just think that there's this big need for us to do life, in a large group setting, having a community that we're grounded in. But sometimes, and most of the times, that community is what actually provides the place for deep and meaningful relationships. So I think that's what we really want to accomplish in this, is that we're creating and we're cultivating an environment, a culture, a ministry where people can create deep and meaningful relationships with one another.
So what I hear you saying is that the emphasis is not going to be necessarily on events.
No.
Right? It's not going to be on just gatherings. There will be times to gather.
Oh yeah,
and
because that's the way that a lot of people get involved.
They get
Yeah,
connected.
they first get involved.
So there's a level and I agree. I think I think it's the same in just in church ministry in general. There's a level where the big gathering enables connection, where people can get connected to. People get connected to a church by attending a church on a weekend or during its regular gathering times. That's when but if that's all that you have, it really never, the level of growth in your life will be very minimal.
Yeah.
You have to step into a deeper form of community.
Correct.
And so I think, we talk about community because that's what we believe that we are and what we hope for, but I think that there's different layers or there's different levels of community. I mean, you can see it with Jesus, even when he walked on the earth. Like, you know, there were crowds of people that gathered to him whenever he would speak or do things, right? But there was a smaller community of 12 that he traveled with, you know, and some women that he traveled with.
And then even
he had
closer.
three.
And
Then he had three of them
even
that were
closer,
closer.
right.
And
Concentric
you can maybe
circles.
argue, you know, one of them was maybe his closest friend. Now they debate on that. I mean, John
He
would
thinks
maybe
it
think
was.
John thinks it was
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
but you have so I think this is what we in our faith context believe the Son of God. Okay, if this is something that he employed in his life, why would we think we don't need anything
Yeah.
like that?
Right.
And so it seems like that the focus of this, and I like that because I think it's a little bit, it's different. We didn't just go create something to create something. This has been a long conversation
Yeah.
that I know you and many other women in our church that have been kind of a part of like really spearheading this have kind of like really tried to say, let's take traditional, hey, if you're a church, you should have this ministry and you should have this ministry.
Yeah.
And let's put that aside for a moment and say, what actually has
What-
impact?
yeah.
What's actually going to help people?
Yeah.
And the focus that we really have landed on is we want to help women. And we're looking at similar things for men because this is a human thing.
Yeah.
Right.
This is not just
Yeah.
a woman thing. This is a human thing.
Yeah.
But the circles have to get smaller. We got the big gathering has to somehow get into a smaller or a different subset, which will get into a smaller one. But the end goal, which you hope, is that women would, because I do think that there is a place for that. Women finding connection with other women. There are some
Right.
things that only women are going to be able to connect
Yeah.
with on a
Correct.
level.
Yeah.
There's some things that only men are going to connect with on a level for what they have to do.
Right.
And so I do think that there is a time and a place for people to find kind of deeper, more authentic level of relationship with somebody that does have something very much in common, whether it's we're both moms, we're both wives,
Yeah.
we're both husbands, you know what I mean? To find that commonality to help, like you said, to do life together,
Yeah.
and someone that maybe is even further along. So
Yeah.
it's about connection,
Yeah.
but in a deep level, right?
Yeah, and I think like you had talked about this in I can't remember what series it was. Maybe it wasn't part of a series. You talked about how like part of being in a deep, meaningful relationship with someone is that it's not all fluffy and
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
like it's not all like encouragement of like it's okay, like you're doing a good job. I mean, like I think of the many conversations, and it really boils down to like, are you a teachable person? Because the parts of my life that have been used in the biggest ways are when someone has confronted me and loved me enough.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that goes back to the
Yeah.
deep relationships, loved me enough to say, like, have you thought about this? And maybe that's not the healthiest thing for you. Not only, like, so the reason I'm saying this is because, I think that it's easy for women to get together and just be like, oh, your clothes look so cute.
Yeah.
or like, I
Yeah.
love your hair. When
Do
you
you
get
guys
it
talk
done?
like that when you get together too?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. I just like how your voice changed.
Yeah.
Like, oh, your cousin looks
Valley
so
Girl
cute.
style.
I
But I
shouldn't have done
just,
that. That didn't sound
yeah,
right. Okay.
you just ratted yourself
Yeah.
out. I think that from a surface perspective, it's like it's not just to gather together with people who are just like you. It's actually to get into a community of people that are not like you and that
Yeah.
have gone before you and done different things than you, so you can yourself learn from them.
Yeah.
And along the way learn about yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
like a lot of it with women, identity. I mean, like we could talk hours about
Right.
identity, and I
Yeah.
think that that's a really crucial part of any women's ministry. But it's not just to stand up and be like, we all have identity problems.
Yeah.
And what do we do about it? Just like love Jesus more.
Yeah.
I think it's like the life on life, like talking to someone that is willing to shoot you straight and say, I don't really know if you handled that the best way.
Yeah.
Maybe you should think about this next time. And
Yeah.
I think
Good.
that people genuinely want that
They
now.
do.
Like I feel like the pandemic
Yeah.
really shifted some authenticity and vulnerability within
Yeah.
people,
Well-
because I don't think you can go deep unless you have
Yeah,
you
that's
got to
good.
open yourself up.
Yeah, well, and I think so. I was listening to a message the other day from a pastor in New York City, and he was talking about how from the pandemic there's like this proliferation of messages and content. People can get content, messages, things like that they need, but like really what people are looking for is this kind of community that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so that's even why people are looking to come to church nowadays, is they're looking for
Yeah.
this deeper level of community. But can we just acknowledge something and say that this type of community where you are opening yourself up to making yourself vulnerable to let people speak, it's scary
It is.
for a lot of people. And I think that just for myself, even the moments, I can relate to what you said, that some of the most pivotal moments of your life have come from people that you're close to who've spoken maybe specific things into your life or called specific things out in your life. And I would echo that and say it's the same for me and my journey. I remember when I was felt called into ministry, a mentor, someone who I was really close to, had some specific things to say to me about that journey, and that impacted my future and how I viewed myself stepping into ministry. Because at first I wanted to go plant a church and be a lead pastor. Then I was like, yeah, that's not for me. There's a lot of work that comes with that. But all that to say that it's scary to open yourself up to someone, to really let them speak into your life and maybe speak to areas where you need to grow in. But I just want to say that when you actually find that those 2 or 3 people that you can really, that you trust, that you trust their voice, like, and you know that God's speaking through them to you, that can be one of the most rewarding experiences that you can have as a Christ follower here on this earth. To find that with someone, and it can change your life in really incredible ways if you find it. But you have to be intentional. That's just not something that's just going to come naturally. You can just walk into the doors of any community and just find that, especially today. It's all surface level. It's very, face, whatever. You have to be intentional about seeking that out and know that it takes time to develop that.
Letting your guard down.
Yeah.
So that's like what
A lot of time.
the Bible says, that as iron sharpens iron, one friend sharpens another.
Right.
Well, that's speaking of something that cuts.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's speaking of something hard against hard. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people, it's funny because we don't want to, we have to, like you said, we have to be in a place where we feel, I think, comfortable enough, loved enough, accepted enough. And that just doesn't happen often from like a one-to-many or abroad. It has to happen in a close, intimate type of thing. So
and it takes time too. And so as this gets off the ground, we've got things coming up that are what we're hoping that kind of tills that soil a little bit, softens it up, and allows some of those relationships to begin growing, because it takes time. It takes a lot of discernment to trust. And so, like, how do we, one of my questions is that how do you create an environment where that kind of learning and growing can happen?
And in a way, one of the things that we found is that it has to be organic.
Right.
Like, as much as because that's
Oh,
one of the
yeah.
things that I don't like about church world, church ministry, and even from the ministry staff is, and I've kind of like, as of late, kind of like shifted my perspective on this. It's I believe, like, in leading, it's our job to create the environment where authentic, organic connection, growth, all that happens. I mean, we want to help orchestrate as best we can, but I just don't think that it's as easy as create a program, everybody create events, everybody shows up at events, then you consider, okay, you're discipled, you're this. It just doesn't work that way, and we end up getting as a leader, you get frustrated because you're like, well, I've done all these things, I'm working as hard as I ever could have before, but nothing's really changing in people's lives, and that.
It's because everybody's on a different continuum of their growth. And so it's like, you can't have a program that captures where everybody's at in their journey. And so I think that, it goes back to being organic about it. How do you create a culture that this is the norm, that you pair up with, 2 or 3 women and you do life together. And I mean, I think a lot of that, the cool thing is I think a lot of that has already been happening. Yeah. And I mean, because like you said, these conversations have been going on for a few years, and to see that God has already started that in a lot of our community is so encouraging and hopeful. I mean, just gives me so much hope because, well, and another reason it's like that God's doing it without us officially launching anything or taking it off the ground.
Right.
He's like, see, this is my work, not
Yeah.
your
Right.
work. It's my work. I've already started it. I'm going to continue to do it. So just remember that through this whole process, I will create and establish the environment. I'll
That's good.
create and cultivate the soil, and you just be faithful with what I feel like I've given you.
That's
know?
good.
That's
So
right.
what are some of the things that are a little bit more unique about this approach this time around for us as a church, kind of trying to start this again? I know your heart, and I loved it the first time we sat down and you started saying, I just remember we just had a conversation. I think it was in Panera once, and you were just like, these are the things that have helped me. I would love to create that. And I just said, that's kind of fresh. I don't really see a lot of people doing that. I know it's going to take some time to build what ultimately you hope to see happen. So we won't go into all of that. But what are some of the, like, I feel like we're taking a very different approach to doing a ministry. Ever before was like you come to the church once a month on this Tuesday, and there's women's night, and there's a speaker, and there's maybe some worship one time, or maybe a meal one time, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we're trying to reach a little bit of a different end. And so I know that you have a kind of a unique vision for how you see this playing out. Do you want to talk about maybe what are some of the things that we have in the works that's going to help maybe create these connections just to get us started?
So a few things just on the, near horizon are that we're actually going to be starting a podcast for women.
Oh, cool.
And
That's
so,
awesome.
that's going to get off the ground really soon. And really the premise of that is just to begin to have conversations similar to what this podcast does.
Yeah.
And the reason I love this is because like you guys just throw out a topic and you can talk about it for a long time. And I think that that's how sometimes, not everybody, that's how a lot of people learn is just through conversation. And so I think that, like I said, we're all on a different part of the continuum of our journey.
Right.
And some people might, have a really, robust foundation in walking with God and, living their life in a way that honors him. But I think there's also just people who are like, this is really intriguing to me, and I don't really know what this looks like, and I don't really know what this path looks like, but I'm willing to just like listen in. And so I think that the vision behind this podcast that we'll be starting is that it will be a platform to listen to a conversation, because we're going to have so many women, different women come on. And one way that I learned about like the way to handle very practical situations was by having conversations. And so I think this, what I like really want to see this do is that just to be a model and a place where you're invited to listen, you have a seat at the table, to listen in on what it looks like for some of these women to come up to the table and share their story, the really sad parts, the really joyful parts, and to see that there is a thread in the tapestry that's woven through from beginning to where they are now, that has been God ordaining and orchestrating every single thing to be where they are now, and to look back and say, God did all that.
That's
and I think just for anybody, it's inspiring to hear people's stories.
Yeah.
It is,
I mean, stories tell.
Yeah.
I mean, how long have stories been around? I mean, like
Yeah.
we've been passing down
People have
stories since the
stories.
beginning of humanity.
Right.
And so to
The
see
people that listen to the podcast that we do the most have been the ones where we have the people on telling their story.
story.
And it's just,
Yeah.
there's nothing like
It's
a
because
story.
we have that
Right.
commonality with
Yeah.
everybody, is that we
Right.
all have a story.
Yeah.
And it's just
You get inspired
you do.
Right.
by other people's stories.
You
We had
do.
I see what
Kayla
you did
on
there.
here. You
Oh,
do.
she
Yes.
was. Oh,
It's
I love
inspiring,
listening
right?
to
And
her.
if you're a mom, you're going, all what she does and how she handles
Yeah.
Right.
4 kids
Yes.
and a son like Aiden with all that.
Yeah.
To me, if I'm a mom, I'd be like, I'm so inspired. I can handle my 3 kids, or I can handle
Right.
my whatever, even though the
Yeah.
schedule's crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, and it just
we
brings
need stories to
perspective.
it brings
And when we
that's good.
listen,
Yeah.
when we
Perspective.
listen to someone else's story, we then gain a new perspective
Yes.
of how God is working in our story. Because we don't,
That's
when we
good.
when we come and we listen to a conversation and we see that God's at work in that person's life, well, then I start to see when I listen to it enough, I start to see and realize the ways and the patterns that God's working in my life. And then I realize, oh, I'm loved by God. And that makes all the difference in my purpose and the way I live my life.
That's so good.
That's awesome.
So-
So you're starting with a podcast, which I think is again, it's kind of a fresh way. I mean, we started this one here, and podcasts aren't new, but to kind of leverage that as a form of ministry, I think there's a lot of unique benefits to it. One, people can listen or watch when they have time.
Right.
That's one of the things I think there's a challenge in our culture today, is having something for such a broad scope of people in different places in life. Some who are working second shift, some who are working weekends, some who are, and they got kids, and their kids have sports. And so it's like when you just have an event-based ministry, it's so easy to miss and not be able to connect or help people.
Yeah.
And so I love the idea of you guys being able to, because that is there available for anybody anytime.
Right.
And I think if there's one thing that I learned that we're taking as a mindset into how do we reach people today through our context and through church and community with this, with the pandemic, with online, with everything, is kind of learning that like we have to learn how to engage people where they are, not just expect you're going to come and show up here.
Right.
Yeah.
So whether it's online, like what we do is we get told all the time, people are like, oh, we went through us, oh, we watched online for 3 months before we came in person. So I think the podcast is a great way to continually pour out knowledge, wisdom, inspiration, all those things. So when in the church, like you said, bringing people on to talk about parenting, you get master classes in parenting, or master classes in being a wife, or master from some women who've been done it for 20 years or 15 years. You know, you're learning from them without having ever been close to them.
Yeah.
Now, that's not the ultimate goal, but I love that idea. So podcast coming soon, starting around the beginning of August.
Right.
Women's podcast. What else do we have coming up
We
that they have to look forward to?
actually have a conference coming up, a women's conference.
Inspired conference?
Yeah.
The
Okay.
Inspired
It's going to be
Conference.
September 25th. So
Okay.
make sure that your wives mark it on their, make
Yeah.
sure you mark it on your
Yes.
calendar so your wife can come.
Okay.
There you go.
You take care of all the things.
That's right. September 25th. What day
All
is
the
that?
girls.
All the
Is that a
things,
Saturday?
All the girls.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Saturday, September 25th.
September
Now,
25th.
what can women who are listening to this expect at an Inspired conference? What are you guys hoping to do?
Well, I think that ideally this is a launching point for every single woman. Doesn't matter if you go here. It doesn't matter if you're a part of this church or not. It doesn't matter, what kind of life situation you have. I mean, like we go back to the vision of X Church, like getting people on the path to God. And I think that a thing like a conference reaches a very wide spectrum of people, of women. And it can, I mean, really would do what its name says, is inspire. I mean, I'm thinking things that we're going to have in the lobby, things that like we'll have prepared as far as content goes, some breakout sessions that are very specific to like areas that we all deal with.
Yeah.
I think that there's one on comparison. There's one on anxiety. There's one on parenting.
Yeah.
I love how practical those are. Because
Oh,
I think
so
Yes.
practical.
I think sometimes in the church world, we as leaders can end up leaning back into, hey,
Spiritual terms.
just spiritual
Heady.
and heady or Bible concepts. Now,
Yeah.
it's not that we won't use that or maybe
Right.
preach from it or whatever, but if it never becomes applicable in where we are in life, then it just becomes, oh, I just heard that or I learned that, but it
Yeah.
never began to flesh out in that realm. And so it sounds like those are some things that everybody's dealing
Yeah.
with, every woman's dealing
Yeah.
with in their context. And so that just seems, I love that. I
Yeah.
love the
Yeah.
fact that you guys are going those places where it can almost just be easier to go, we're going to talk about prayer, and we're going to talk
Yeah.
about reading the Bible, and we're going to talk about those things. Okay, I mean, we talk about that as a church.
Yeah.
So here you're getting a little more specific and go, let's talk about those kind of
And
topics.
if anything,
that.
I mean, maybe it might not be like you go home with, how to discipline your child.
Right.
It gives you a good, maybe like a mindset
Mindset.
shift
Mhm.
to
For how
where,
you parent or-
like I've read a book about parenting before. and I've read a book that's super practical, like, like time out for this many minutes, or, use this language, or don't do this, or feed them this time, or whatever. But I've also read books that have this overarching, like, parenting under God's umbrella. And for me, I've been like, I never thought of it that way before. And to actually, maybe you come to the conference and you sit in one of the breakouts, and you're able to, like, take home a mindset shift, a different perspective in which to see it through. And then you can go in and, like, dive into the specifics of that. But it will be so fun. I mean, we've been talking about it, lots planned. It's going to be a very inspiring event.
Inspiring event. And I know from when I talked to you that, we talked about not wanting to make this podcast all event based. So there might be maybe a couple times a year, once a year, where there is a bringing everybody together to really
like a gathering.
But I know that some of the plans, and we'll let you kind of unveil those, and your kind of team unveil them as they go. But I know that the goal is to move from using those kind of events, because they're going to be fun too, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be like, you want to go to this.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's also then to use that to connect women.
Yes.
To then hopefully get into smaller circles that will hopefully get into a smaller circle, but naturally and organically, and to create.
Yeah, and I mean, coming to the event and meeting people. I mean, that's the first step is, getting out of your comfort zone. I mean, I have to do it too. I mean, I serve on Sundays, and I serve in the production, and there's a room right back there that has a door. And it's real small, and you can stay in it and, like, talk to only the production people. But I know that my life gets bigger and better and grows more when I step outside there and I say, "Hey, I'm Jessica. I've never met you. What's your name?" Yeah. So this will be definitely
a little bit easier way to introduce. I think if you're a woman that's been coming maybe to our community for a while, but has never really developed some real connections.
Yes,
this
would
is
be
a
a
perfect
great
time
place.
to come.
Yes.
That everybody is going to be in the same footing.
Yeah, everybody's in the same boat.
And so it's a perfect place to come, but it's going to be, I think, a more natural way to connect.
Yeah.
And find connection. And find people that are like, oh, wow, your kids go to the same school.
Yeah.
I see you all the time at the soccer field. You know what I mean? But I never got to say hi. I didn't know you go here. Next thing you know, I mean, one of the things that I think my wife and I have both really enjoyed, even from our school, my daughter's school experience, is the relationships that we created from sports.
Oh, yeah.
We created relationships when our daughter played soccer or gym. In fact, we're going to be going in a little bit. We're going to be going to my favorite
Your
place
favorite place on earth.
Disney. And we're
it really
going
is the
because
best place on earth,
it is the best place on earth, except for in the middle of the summer. It's going to be really hot. Well, I didn't get to pick it. Okay, this is out of my hands.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully, the Women's Mission Inspired will help change this in my wife, but
the vacation
probably
plans.
not. But we're going with. It's a pretty large group, and these are people that we got connected to through the common thing of our daughters were in gymnastics together. They were in dance together. They were in Destination Imagination together. We built relationships with the families of them. And so, like, we're going to celebrate our daughter's 16th birthdays. Like, there's like 3 of us that all have daughters. They're all turning 16 over the summer. And we love them to death. They've all moved to different places, but they're some of the greatest people we've ever met. We have, like, it's like, even though they moved, it's like, the people that you can have a conversation that you haven't talked to in maybe 4 months.
You just pick right back up.
And it's like yesterday. Yeah. And so we've been able to build relationships with people like that are just amazing people.
And you have those relationships because you put the time into them.
Right, intentionality.
And what I'm saying is, like, there was a specific thing that crossed our paths that you feel like, man, we're going to be friends for the rest of our lives, even if we don't see each other but once every couple years, or you know what I mean, through social media. And so I think that's the difference is today. I think a lot of times we cross paths in social media, and that's sometimes all it ever is. Our paths crossed and then created kind of deeper friendship and meaningful conversations, and then we use social media to stay in contact.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the traps of our culture today is to say that, our paths crossed on Instagram, or our paths crossed on Facebook, or they crossed on these things, but we never went any further.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's what I would say maybe that something like the Inspired Conference can do is that it can help you cross paths with somebody else that you never know your best friend is out there waiting to be met.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think we all want that,
Yeah.
whether we
Yeah.
realize it.
Yeah.
And we all need it.
Yeah.
So I think that's exciting.
It's awesome.
I'm excited. And I know there's more things that you have planned
Oh, yeah.
coming up after that, but that's all we're going to drop for now.
Yeah.
Right.
That's all we're going to drop for now. This has been great. I think the women of our church, it means a lot to me because I have a household of them, and I have 2 daughters, and I have one that's married and she's now moved out. But I want for someone like her to rub shoulders with someone like you. I want my daughters to be able to be around someone like you. Like, it's one thing, it's mom and dad. When it's mom and dad, there's always so much, there's only so much you can say. There's almost, you can have a lot of
Yeah.
influence. But when they get a little older, there are things that they want to be able to only talk about with somebody else. They'll find that person somewhere in this world. I'd rather them find it in women like you that I think are incredible role models that have a life that is worth emulating. I want them to be inspired by people like you. And so to take this vision and say, we want to bring that to all ages. And I think that there are women who are also at different places in their life who have lived life that have so much to offer.
Oh, there's it's just I mean,
Yes.
it's an untapped source is
Yeah.
the wisdom of those who've gone before us.
And that's what you hope to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just maybe closing, like what would you say, like, is there anybody in your life or that really played an instrumental role in your life when it comes to those decisions? Like, what did it look like, just briefly, for you to walk in life with them? What did that look like?
Well, like I said, there's been different women at different stages, and I think that's all God's design.
Yeah.
But I remember at the very beginning of it, and like I started attending a different church with Trey when we were dating when we were younger, and I honestly wanted to know how to date and honor God. I just want to know that because like Trey and I had dated for 6 months or something, and there was we were in a youth group, and my youth group pastor's wife just had a hospitable heart, an inviting heart, and I walked up to her so awkwardly and was like, "Can you mentor me?"
You asked for that.
Yeah, I was like, "Can
asked for
can
that.
I just like
That's
follow
cool.
you around, or
Why-
I just
what
want
did
to
you
learn."
see? What did you
Oh,
see?
she was so
hospitable, but-
inspiring.
Okay.
She just,
Now
I mean,
we see where
Now
it
we see
comes
where it came
from.
from.
Okay, that's great.
She loved life. She loved who she was. She wasn't prideful. She wasn't bossy. She just, she had the idea that like what you see is what you get, and I got nothing to hide. And so what that looked like practically was she was like, "Yeah, I'd love to." And so she invited me over to her house with like her husband, which is my youth minister, and just like watch TV, and, like have conversation. I mean,
Yeah.
in her mind, she was very intentional about it, but to me, it just felt like, oh, this
Hanging
is
out.
just we're hanging out.
Bring it out.
And just over the years, like she would give me a front row seat to her life. I mean, like I saw her and her husband fight. I saw them like make amends. I saw her like grow a baby in her tummy. I saw her give birth to. Oh, I didn't see her give birth. I saw her raise a child.
I can tell you have little kids. I saw her grow a baby in her tummy.
Right.
That works when you have little kids.
Yes.
It's like in her
Just
tummy.
the reason I'm laughing is because on the way here, Phoenix in my back seat, he's 5. He goes, I don't know what we got talking about, but he said something like, "I thought babies came out of your mouth."
Oh,
And I'm like, no,
no.
but we're not having that conversation
no,
right now.
we're not
it's
ready for that.
just yeah.
But anyway, she just
Wow.
let me have a front row seat to her life, and I was around when she had a baby and when she had a toddler, and
Yeah.
then our paths kind of went separate ways, and she moved and I moved, and and for a while there was just several women. There wasn't just one. For a while in my story, there's just like several older women in different decades of their life that I was close to, and that just had just an inviting heart. And what are you dealing with? Or what's God doing in your life right now? Like, they would ask me questions like that. And I'm like, I don't know. But like, but let me think about it. And then just to be so, thinking, I guess God is doing something in my life, but what? And then more recently, like I hadn't had anybody, I had found myself pouring into others just because in my story, that has been so fundamental in my growth that I can't not do it for others.
Yeah,
like
right.
that has shaped the way that I view like a lifestyle is that if you're a young woman and like you can come over and you can hang out at my house, I might be cooking dinner and you can sit at my island and we'll talk. And that's happened for several years. But I was getting to a place where I'm like, I need a lot of wisdom and knowledge on like a certain area or something I was working through. And I just prayed. I was like, God, I don't know who that is, because like at that point we were newer in the church, and I just asked God, can you just provide that for me? And a woman that I had been connected to for probably 10 to 15 years before that, who was one of those several women in different decades. I actually worked under her. And I called her, like, I feel like God laid her on my heart. I called her. I was like, can we just, if you have any time in your schedule, can you just like, can I talk to you for like an hour? I need some advice. And I like, you came to mind, and I just want to know, I need to pick your brain. And she called me back and she said, I would love to. I'll talk to you every week. And I was like, really? And she was like, it would be the joy of my life to be able to, pour into you right now. And like, she knows the history of like, she knows my husband really well. She knows my kids really well. So it has just been the biggest blessing in my life recently. And now for her, like we talk every other week for 2 or 3 hours at a time. And like, I'm not saying everybody has that time. And it's just been like, that's just the season I'm in.
That's life-giving to
That
you,
is
though.
so life-giving, because she always points me back to Christ every single time. And she'll tell me things I don't really want to hear, but I need to chew on and I need to process. And so I just, we need people in our life like that.
do.
It doesn't matter if you're a male or a female. We all need people that have gone before that have the view of like, I want to invest in someone else.
Yeah.
And I would love for, that to be the culture and the pace of what goes on here, is that you make time in your life to be invested into, and you also make time in your life to invest in someone else.
Yeah.
It's so important.
That's so good.
It's biblical. I mean, Paul
It
talks
is.
about it in Titus and Titus 2 and all that stuff. And again, just at the heart of all that is intentionality and seeking it out and purpose. And I think that throughout your story, just even that, just your heart for asking, hey, would you be willing? Hey, would you talk to me there? I just think that's so cool. And I just want to say, as we wrap up, just for people listening, like, it doesn't matter. We've been talking a lot about women, and I'm kind of jealous as a guy. I'm like, dang, all this stuff is going on. Like, man, I hope there's stuff, I think, for men, young adults on the horizon. I just say that the heart of this conversation, to seek after people to do life with, to find real meaningful relationships. You don't need a ministry to do that. You don't need, there's no like, we're called to do that as Christ followers. And you can find that if you, again, are intentional with your time and who you surround yourself with. And maybe if you're like, well, I don't know, I've never done that before. A simple, practical next step is to just pray. Just say, hey, God, would you bring someone into my life? Show me someone that I can begin to connect with. And then don't be afraid to just take that next step.
Yeah,
and it could be the next day.
Yeah.
God could
Well,
bring someone into your life.
Patience is.
Yes.
I feel like I prayed for a person that I could gain a lot of that from, and it. I prayed for months and months, and just didn't have any direction. And
I think it's something we all crave.
Yeah.
No matter who we are.
Yeah.
Right.
Male, female, human, we all crave, I think, not just relationship, but I have found having somebody in ministry. I have someone now that I look up to as a mentor, kind of more of a big brother type of situation. But for years in trying to lead a church, I prayed for a mentor because I didn't have one. I had people in my life that were instrumental in my development, but people that were in a similar type of situation. Everybody has, I think, the unique side of the role that they wear. So in me, in the role that I was in as a lead pastor of a church, that was growing. It was a certain size. I'd never been in a church that size before. You know, I'm looking like who's out there, and I probably prayed for over 10 years, 15 years for someone before I really feel like I have someone now that I call when I don't know what to do, when I who's down the road. Yeah. And that is like, it's like having a safety net.
Yeah. Oh,
like there's
absolutely.
something about in life going, I don't know what to do. Pick up the phone. I know who I can call. And we've developed enough relationship in person and over the phone that it can pick up any time and go, I'm dealing with this. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Right.
And like, there's something about that that's so, like, we need that. I need that. You need it as a mom, as a dad. You need it as a husband, as a wife. You need it in every aspect of your life. And so one of the things I just will say, and just as we close, just to commend, is that I love the perspective of this, that one of the things that has been really, I think, important for probably the last 2 years or so of our church life in our context is we've been in a place of just deconstructing a lot of what we had constructed over the years, of saying this is what it means to do church. This is, you know, following all the scripts and following all this. And we've kind of got to a point going, no, I don't care about that anymore. I want something that's effective. Like, if we're called by Jesus to make disciples, at the end of the day, if we can have an event that helps do that, great. If our events don't help do that, we're not doing them anymore.
Right.
And so we are kind of, I think, at a threshing floor of kind of starting something new with a little bit of new perspective. And I think we'll find some things work and some things won't work.
Yeah.
Right.
That's part of starting something new. But I love the end goal, and I love that you're kind of spearheading this, you know, in our church with some other women. You're not the only one. There's a team of people, and I know you're helping kind of facilitate it from a staffing perspective. But one thing I love in what you were talking about is that this is something that has been a part of your life. This is not going, well, I think we need this, so we should start something. This is coming out of an overflow. I have watched you do this over the years, to spend your life investing in. I've seen you do it with my daughter. I've seen you do it with other women in the church, where you're inviting them over all the time and just go, hey, let's come over, hang out, have lunch, bring your kids over. And that is the way I think the greatest form of discipleship really happens. And so I know that's the end goal, is to create and foster not a ministry where people come to events at the church, but to create relationships and meaningful connections for women in their life, so they can grow and become more like Christ. And so so it's going to be different than maybe what's been in the past. And I think that's going to be something that listen, for all the women in our church, I would hope you're excited by this, because like I said,
it's really cool.
I love that the fresh perspective, the end goal is really about helping women find other women in their lives that they can do life with, walk beside, and we'll all be better for it. We're gonna have better families for it. We're gonna be better community for it, and so
it's got a big ripple effect.
Yeah, it does. Well, thank you so much for coming on
thanks
here
for having me.
and sharing it. We're really excited for Inspired.
Yes.
And what that's going to do in our church, and what it's going to do for women. And speaking as men who have all women surrounding them, and wives and daughters. I'm grateful for a ministry like this. I especially mine are older and really stepping into that adult life where they're making decisions on their own. For me as a dad who's watching that, I love knowing that they could maybe get connected and have people who will help guide them, where it's like, I don't want dad to tell me. But if there's a woman who's 30 years old that they really respect, you know what I mean? It's building a relationship that can sit down and look at them and go, I wouldn't do that. Or this is what I did, and just, you know, and I found that this caused this in my, so I changed the way I discipline my kids, because that's gold. That's worth everything. It's worth everything to me. So, and I just would say as well, for anybody that maybe isn't in our community of faith or is not in that context, I would say you probably would recognize you need people in your life. It's not just people who are in a church community. That's why we look for communities at gym and all kinds of places, is because we're looking for it. And I would just challenge you, like, is the community, or are the communities that you're a part of, are they superficial, or as you said, transient, or are they deep? Are they intimate? Are they personal? Do you allow people to speak into your life when you have thoughts and ideas about life, politics, anything, and say, no, here's where I think that's off, And I think we all need that. And so that's the challenge for us. I think the takeaway is not just for, I think, women, but I think for all of us is to say, do you have somebody in your life that you would allow to speak into your life? And if not, what would it look like for you? If you have somebody that you have in your mind, go, oh, I respect the heck out of that person. They're somebody that any day, ask.
Yeah.
Take the bold step. Give them a call like you did.
Yes.
Call them and say, could I have some of your time?
Yep.
I know you're probably busy, just an hour or whatever, because I just respect you and I'm looking for it. And you'd be surprised how many people I think will actually want that. They crave that. They've lived life and they have an opportunity to give back because someone did it to them. And so I just encourage you, no matter where you are in a spiritual setting or non-spiritual setting, I think we all need this, and it makes us better at life. So, hey, I want to say thank you guys for tuning in, for listening, watching, whether it's on podcast platform, video, YouTube. We're just so thankful to have you a part of our family. I want to encourage you that if you found this episode really helpful, or maybe you know some women, whether they're local, not local, but you know some women who are maybe not in our church community, and you're watching this, you're part of it, go, I'm going to forward this to them. I want to invite them. September 25th, the Inspired Conference is coming. New women's podcast. I assume it's going to be the Inspired podcast.
Yeah.
So it was going to be coming out here in August. And so I just encourage you, follow all of those things, get involved, get connected. And as always, we love to get feedback. And so if you have any thoughts, questions, this stirs thoughts in your mind, we would love to know what they are. You can send us an email to podcast@thex.church. As always, thank you so much, guys, for joining us.
Thanks.
And thank you so much for watching. Until next time, we'll see you later.